Jake Harrison walked through the long metal halls of the Galactic Trade Station. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth floor. The station was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Bright lights ran along the walls, and strange sounds came from different rooms as he passed. He stopped at a large window and looked out into space. Stars filled the black sky like tiny diamonds. 3 moons hung in the distance, each one a different color. Jake had been in space for 2 months now, but the view still amazed him. "Jake, there you are." A woman's voice came from behind him. He turned to see Commander Lisa Parker walking toward him. She was the leader of the human group that had come to the station. Her face looked worried. "What's wrong?" Jake asked Lisa. Stopped next to him and looked out the window, too. "The Zephyrians want us to leave the tournament. They say it's too dangerous for humans." Jake frowned. The Zephyrians were tall, thin aliens with blue skin and big eyes. They had fancy weapons and could make energy shields around their bodies. Their leader, High Commander Veltar, had been rude to the humans since they arrived. "Do you think they really care about our safety?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "Ambassador Kane thinks they want to embarrass us in front of everyone. Make us look weak." Jake nodded. He had expected this. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 6 months ago. Most aliens still thought humans were stupid and weak. They called Earth a death world because it was so dangerous compared to their home planets. The 2 humans started walking toward the arena. Jake could hear loud voices and strange sounds coming from inside. The combat tournament happened every year. 12 different alien species would send their best fighters to compete. The winners got respect and better trade deals. The losers got ignored. "How many humans are competing?" Jake asked. "Just you," Lisa said. "The council only gave us 1 spot since we're new." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He would represent all of humanity in the tournament. If he lost badly, it might hurt Earth's chances of getting good trade deals or military help. They reached the arena entrance. The room was enormous, with seats rising up in circles around a large fighting area in the center. Hundreds of aliens sat in the seats, talking in different languages. Jake's translator device turned their words into English in his ear. Most of the talk was about him. "Look at the human," said a voice from the Corithan section. The Corithans were big aliens with 4 arms and natural armor covering their bodies. "He looks so small and weak." "Humans use primitive weapons," said another voice. "They still fight with metal and chemicals instead of energy." Jake looked around the arena. Each alien species had their own section with their own flag. The Zephyrians sat in the blue section, looking elegant and superior. The Draconians, who looked like giant lizards, filled the red section with their massive bodies. The crystal-like Nixari sparkled in the white section. A small yellow section had been set up for the humans. Only 5 people sat there: Lisa, Ambassador, Kane, Dr. Amy Chun, and 2 other humans from the diplomatic team. They looked tiny compared to the alien sections. "The tournament brackets are being announced," Lisa said, pointing to a large screen above the arena. Jake watched as names appeared on the screen in different alien languages. The translator in his ear read them out loud. When his name appeared, matched against Warrior Prime Kexdal of the Corithans, the arena erupted in laughter. The sound was strange. Different alien species laughed in different ways. The Zephyrians made high musical sounds. The Draconians growled and hissed. The Corithans clicked their mandibles together rapidly. "Did you hear that?" one alien said loudly. They matched the human against Kexdal. The poor creature won't last 10 seconds. "Maybe they should send their machines instead," said a Zephyrian. "At least those might put up a fight." Jake clenched his fists, but kept his face calm. He had learned long ago not to let insults affect him. Words couldn't hurt him, but they could distract him from his goal. Dr. Chun came down from the human section to talk to them. She was a scientist who studied alien life forms. "I've been watching the other fighters practice," she said quietly. "Each species has developed their own fighting style based on their home world." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "The Zephyrians rely completely on their technology. Energy weapons, force shields, computer targeting systems. The Corinthians use their natural advantages: 4 arms, thick armor, and brute strength. The Draconians breathe poison gas and use their claws and teeth." Jake thought about this. "So they're all specialists." "Exactly," Dr. Chun said. "They've perfected one way of fighting. But that might also be a weakness." More laughter came from the alien sections. Jake could see them pointing at him and making gestures. Some were already placing bets on how quickly he would lose. "The betting pools are open," announced the arena's computer system. "Current odds: Warrior Prime Kextol favored at 50 to 1. This brought even more laughter from the aliens. Jake watched as Kextol entered the arena for a practice session. The Corithan was massive, at least 8 feet tall, with muscles bulging under his natural armor. His forearms moved independently, each one holding a different weapon. Plasma blades hummed with deadly energy as he went through his fighting routine. The aliens cheered as Kextol destroyed several practice targets with ease. His movements were precise and powerful. Each strike could have cut through solid metal. "Impressive," Jake said quietly. "Are you worried?" Lisa asked. Jake shook his head. "I'm learning." He watched Kextol's movements carefully. The Corithan was indeed skilled, but Jake noticed something important. Every attack followed the same pattern. The same stance, the same timing, the same sequence of moves. It was perfect technique, but it was also predictable. "Attention all competitors," the arena announcer said. "The tournament begins in 1 hour. Prepare your equipment and review the rules." Jake walked to the human preparation area. It was much smaller than the alien sections, with basic equipment and simple metal lockers. He opened his locker and looked at his gear. His armor was lightweight compared to what the other fighters wore. His weapons were simple: a knife, a pistol, and a few other tools. Nothing fancy or high-tech. "Jake," Lisa said, coming up behind him, "I know this looks impossible, but remember, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for all of humanity." Jake nodded. He understood the stakes. If he lost badly, it would confirm what the aliens already believed, that humans were weak and primitive. But if he could put up a good fight, maybe even win, it would change everything. He began his warm-up routine. Simple stretches and breathing exercises that he had learned years ago. The aliens probably thought he was just nervous, but Jake was actually preparing his mind and body for battle. The hour passed quickly. Soon, the arena announcer called for the first match. Jake Harrison, representing Earth and humanity, versus Warrior Prime Kextol of the Corithan Empire. As Jake walked toward the fighting circle, the alien laughter grew louder. They were about to see what they thought would be an easy victory for their champion. They had no idea what was coming. The arena buzzed with excitement as the first few matches began. Jake sat in the competitor waiting area, watching each fight carefully on the large screens. He wanted to understand how each alien species fought before his own match started. First fight was between a Zephyrian and an Ethereal. The Zephyrian looked like a tall, thin human with blue skin and large eyes. The Ethereal was harder to see. It looked like a cloud of gas floating in the air, changing shapes constantly. The Zephyrian raised his arm, and a bright energy weapon appeared around his hand. Blue light shot out toward the Ethereal, but the gas creature simply moved to the side. The energy beam passed harmlessly through empty air. The ethereal responded by releasing a cloud of yellow gas. The Yesirian's personal shield activated, creating a glowing barrier around his body. The gas hit the shield and scattered in all directions. For several minutes, the two fighters traded attacks. Energy beams, gas clouds, shield flares, and shape changes. Finally, the Zephyrian's weapon overloaded the ethereal's body, and the gas creature collapsed to the floor, unable to maintain its form. The crowd cheered. Jake noticed something important. The Zephyrian had won, but he had relied completely on his technology. When his first weapon overheated, he had switched to a backup. When that one started failing, he had used a third device. Without his gadgets, he would have been helpless. The second match was between two Corethans. Both fighters had forearms and thick, natural armor. They used traditional weapons, plasma blades, energy hammers, and force spears. The fight was brutal and direct. No fancy moves or complex strategies. Just power against power until one fighters. Armor cracked, and he surrendered. Jake watched the winning Corethan carefully. The alien was strong and skilled, but every move followed the same pattern. Step forward, swing with the right arms, block with the left arms, step back. Over and over, like a dance he'd practiced 1,000,000 times. Dr. Chun joined Jake in the waiting area. She carried a tablet computer filled with notes about the alien fighters. "Interesting patterns," she said, sitting down next to him. "Each species has developed a very specific fighting style." "I noticed that too," Jake said. "They're all specialists." Dr. Chun nodded. "The Zephyrians have advanced so far technologically that they've forgotten how to fight without their gadgets. The Corethans are living weapons, but they only know one way to use their natural advantages." She showed Jake her tablet screen. It displayed charts and graphs about each alien species. "Look at this data. The Draconians always start with a poison gas attack. Always. The Nexari use energy blasts that follow mathematical patterns. The aquatic Murgai only fight using bioelectric charges." Jake studied the information. "What about humans?" Dr. Chun smiled. "That's what makes us different. Humans don't have one fighting style. We have hundreds. Boxing, wrestling, martial arts, sword fighting, gun combat, knife work. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, so we've had to keep adapting." A loud announcement echoed through the arena. Next match, Warrior Prime Kextol of the Corethan Empire versus Jake Harrison of Earth. The alien crowd erupted in laughter and excited chatter. Jake could hear their comments through his translator. "This should be amusing," said a Draconian voice. "The little human against our greatest warrior." "I give him 30 seconds, said another alien. "Kextol will crush him like a bug." "Why did they even let the humans enter?" asked a third voice. "This is embarrassing for everyone." Jake stood up and walked toward the arena entrance. Dr. Chun grabbed his arm. "Jake, remember what I told you? They've specialized, but you've generalized. Use that advantage." Jake nodded and entered the fighting circle. The arena was enormous from this view, with thousands of alien spectators looking down at him. Their voices created a wall of sound that made his ears ring. Kextol was already waiting in the center of the circle. Up close, the Corethan was even more impressive than Jake had thought. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, with thick armor plates covering his entire body. His forearms each held a different weapon, plasma blades that glowed with deadly energy. The Corethan's eyes focused on Jake with what looked like pity. His translator device made his voice boom across the arena. "Little human," Kextol said, "I will make this quick. Your species should not have to suffer this shame for long." More laughter came from the alien sections. The betting displays around the arena showed odds of 60 to 1 against Jake now. Some aliens were placing bets on exactly how many seconds the fight would last. The referee was a floating robot with multiple arms and sensors. Its mechanical voice announced the rules. Combat continues until surrender, unconsciousness, or death. Fighters may use equipment traditional to their species. Energy shields and healing devices are permitted. Begin when the signal sounds. Jake looked around the arena one more time. In the small human section, Lisa and the others watched with worried faces. Ambassador Kane leaned forward in his seat, knowing that this fight could affect Earth's future in the galaxy dot in the alien sections. Most spectators were already losing interest. They expected the fight to be over in seconds. Some had turned to talk to their neighbors. Others were ordering food and drinks, treating this like a brief entertainment between real matches. Jake took a deep breath and focused on Kextall. The Corythan was shifting his weight from foot to foot, warming up his forearms. His plasma blades hummed with energy that could cut through almost any material. But Jake noticed something else. Kextall's stance was exactly the same as the other Corythan fighter he had watched earlier. The same foot position, the same arm angles, the same rhythm of movement. Perfect technique, but predictable. The signal sounded, a loud, harmonic tone that meant the fight had begun. Kextall immediately charged forward, his four weapons creating a whirlwind of deadly energy. To most observers, it looked like the human was about to be cut to pieces, but Jake wasn't there when the blades arrived. He had moved to the side at the last second, just far enough to avoid the attacks. The crowd gasped in surprise. They had expected the human to try to block or to run away in fear. Instead, he had calmly stepped aside like he was avoiding raindrops. Kextall spun around and attacked again. 4 plasma blades came at Jake from different angles, making it impossible to dodge them all. Except Jake did dodge them all. This time he moved forward and to the left, slipping between 2 of the attacks and letting the other 2 pass harmlessly. Behind him, his movement was smooth and effortless, like he was dancing instead of fighting. The arena fell silent. The aliens had expected to see the human destroyed in the first few seconds. Instead, they were watching something they didn't understand. How is he doing that? Asked an Ixari in the crystal section. The mathematical probability of avoiding those attacks should be nearly 0. Maybe he's using some kind of human technology, suggested a Zephyrian. Some kind of prediction device we can't see. But Jake wasn't using any technology. He was using something the aliens had never encountered: human martial arts. Training combined with military combat experience. Years of practice had taught him to read his opponent's body language. The way Kextall shifted his weight told Jake which direction the attack would come from. The tension in the alien's muscles revealed the timing. The angle of his stance showed the range and power of each strike. More importantly, Jake was doing something that no alien fighter had ever done to Kextall. He was learning during the fight. Each attack taught him more about the Corythan's patterns and limitations. Kextall was getting frustrated. His perfect techniques were missing their target completely. He increased his attack speed, using all 4 arms in rapid combinations that should have been impossible to avoid. Jake continued to slip away from each strike, sometimes by inches. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the massive alien warrior swung his deadly weapons at empty air, while the small human seemed to float around him like smoke. "This is impossible," General Thing growled from the Draconian section. "No creature can move like that without enhancement." But Jake was just getting started. He had spent the first part of the fight learning Kextall's attack patterns. Now it was time to show the aliens what humans could really do. Jake had been dodging Kextall's attacks for 3 minutes now. The alien crowd was getting restless. They had come to see a quick victory, not this strange dance between the fighters. Why doesn't the human fight back? Asked a voice from the Yaos. Ethereal section. Is he waiting for something? Maybe he's too scared to attack, laughed a Corithan. Humans are known to freeze up when they're afraid, but Jake wasn't scared or frozen. He was studying. Every dodge taught him more about how Kextol moved. Every near miss showed him the alien's timing and reach. He was building a mental map of his opponent's abilities and weaknesses. Kextol was breathing heavily now. His forearms were starting to move more slowly. The plasma blades were hot and getting hotter with each swing. Sweat was running down the alien's armored face. "Fight me, coward!" Kextol shouted, swinging all 4 weapons in a wide arc that should have cut Jake in half. Jake ducked low and came up inside the alien's reach. For the first time in the fight, he wasn't running away. He was moving closer. This shocked everyone in the arena. Getting close to Kextol meant getting close to his natural armor and his incredible strength. It seemed like suicide. Jake's right hand shot out and grabbed Kextol's primary weapon arm at the wrist. His left hand pressed against the alien's elbow. He twisted his body and used leverage to apply pressure to the joint. Kextol's eyes went wide with surprise and pain. The joint lock was simple physics. Jake was using the alien's own arm as a lever against itself. The Corithan's superior strength actually worked against him, making the lock more painful. The plasma blade fell from Kextol's hand and clattered to the arena floor. The crowd gasped. No one had ever disarmed Kextol before. His weapons were extensions of his body, perfectly balanced for his 4-armed fighting style. Losing one should have been impossible. But Jake wasn't finished. While Kextol was still shocked by losing his first weapon, Jake shifted to a different position. He grabbed the alien's second arm and applied another joint lock, this one targeting the shoulder. The second plasma blade hit the floor. "What kind of fighting technique is this?" demanded High Commander Veltar from the Zephyrian section. "I've never seen anything like it." Dr. Chun was leaning forward in the human section, excitement clear on her face. "It's jujitsu," she explained to Ambassador Kane. "A human martial art that uses an opponent's strength and size against them." Jake continued his systematic disarming of the 4-armed warrior. The third weapon fell when he applied pressure to a nerve cluster in Kextol's wrist. The fourth dropped when he used a twisting motion that made it impossible for the alien to maintain his grip. Within 60 seconds, the mighty warrior prime Kextol stood weaponless in the center of the arena, staring at Jake in confusion and growing anger. "Impossible tricks," Kextol snarled. "Let us fight properly, with strength against strength." The alien charged forward, intending to use his natural advantages, his armor, his size, and his superior physical power. He wrapped his forearms around Jake in a crushing bear hug that should have broken human bones. Jake relaxed in the alien's grip for a moment, letting Kextol think he had won. Then he demonstrated another human fighting principle, using precise strikes against vulnerable targets. His elbow struck a nerve cluster at the base of Kextol's neck, causing temporary paralysis in the alien's upper right arm. His knee found a gap in the armor plating at the alien's hip, targeting a pressure point that sent shooting pain down Kextol's leg. The Corithan's grip loosened, and Jake slipped free. He immediately followed up with a series of strikes that targeted the joints between armor plates, areas that even the Corithan's natural protection couldn't fully cover. "He's not trying to break through the armor," observed an Exari scientist in the crystal section. "He's attacking the spaces between the plates." How did he know those weak points existed? The answer was simple. Humans had been fighting armored opponents for thousands of years. Knights in metal suits, soldiers in body armor, warriors in leather and chainmail. Jake's training included techniques that were specifically designed to defeat protected opponents. Each strike was carefully placed for maximum effect with minimum force. Jake wasn't trying to overpower Kextol. He was using precision to disable the aliens' advantages one by one. Kextol stumbled backward, his left leg no longer supporting his weight properly. His right arm hung useless at his side. For the first time in his career as a warrior, he was losing a fight. "This cannot be happening," he gasped. "I am Warrior Prime of the Corithan Empire. I have never been defeated." Jake stepped back and took a defensive stance. "Surrender," he said quietly. "You fought with honor, but this is over." The alien crowd was completely silent now. They were watching something that challenged everything they thought they knew about combat and about humans. "The human isn't using any advanced technology," whispered a Zephyrian engineer. "Those are just physical techniques. How is that possible?" "Look at his movements," said an ethereal observer. "Every action has a purpose. There's no wasted motion, no unnecessary force. It's like he's been trained to fight opponents exactly. Like Kextol. In a way, that was exactly what had happened. Human martial arts had been developed through centuries of warfare against other humans. Every technique had been tested in real combat, refined through countless battles, and passed down through generations of warriors. Unlike the aliens, who had specialized their fighting methods for their own species and environment, humans had learned to adapt to any opponent. They had fought tall enemies and short ones, fast ones and strong ones, armored ones and unarmored ones. Kextol refused to surrender. With a roar of rage, he launched himself at Jake one final time, using his remaining functional arms to attempt a grappling attack. Jake sidestepped the clumsy charge and applied one more technique, a simple leg sweep that sent the massive alien crashing to the arena floor. Kextol hit the ground hard, his armor clanging against the metal surface. He tried to get up, but his injured leg wouldn't support him. His paralyzed arm was still useless. He looked up at Jake with a mixture of confusion and respect. "I yield," he said quietly. The arena exploded into sound. Not laughter this time, but genuine amazement and surprise. The betting displays were flashing wildly as odds shifted and credits changed hands. "Winner, Jake Harrison of Earth," announced the referee. Robot.Jake helped Kextol to his feet, supporting the injured alien as medical robots rushed onto the arena floor. The Corithan warrior looked at him with new understanding. "What kind of training do humans receive?" Kextol asked as the medical bots began treating his injuries. "We learned to fight anyone," Jake replied simply. "We've had to." As Jake walked off the arena floor, the alien spectators were buzzing with conversation. The easy victory they had expected had turned into something completely different. The primitive human, with his basic techniques, had defeated one of the galaxy's greatest warriors. In the human section, Lisa and the others were cheering. Dr. Chung was taking notes frantically, recording everything that had happened. Ambassador Kane was already thinking about how this victory would change Earth's position in future negotiations. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The tournament had multiple rounds, and word of his victory would spread quickly. The other alien fighters would be studying his techniques, trying to find ways to counter them. More importantly, he had revealed that humans were not the primitive weaklings the aliens had believed. That knowledge would change everything, both for better and for worse. As he reached the competitor waiting area, Jake could hear the aliens in the stands discussing what they had witnessed. "The human used no energy weapons," said one voice. "No shields, no advanced technology. Just his body and his knowledge." "How many other techniques do they know?" asked another. "If one human can do this, what can their armies do?" Jake smiled grimly as he prepared for his next match. The aliens were asking the right questions now. They were beginning to understand that they had seriously underestimated the species from the death world called Earth. The arena was buzzing with excitement as Jake's second match was announced. Word of his victory over Kextol had spread quickly through the station. Aliens who had dismissed humans as weak were now paying close attention. His next opponent was Cyrix of the Draconian Empire. The massive lizard-like alien stood 12 feet tall with natural armor covering his entire body. His claws were as long as kitchen knives, and his teeth could crush metal. Most dangerous of all, he could breathe. A poisonous gas that would kill most life forms in seconds. Jake watched Cyrix's practice session from the waiting area. The Draconian moved with surprising speed for his size. His gas breath could fill a large area quickly, and his claws could tear through solid steel. Unlike Kextol's predictable patterns, Cyrix fought more like a wild animal, unpredictable and savage. "This will be different," Dr. Chun said, joining Jake at the observation window. "Draconians don't use structured fighting techniques like the Corithans. They rely on instinct and natural weapons." Jake nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. His martial arts training would be less effective against an opponent who fought without patterns or rules. The referee robot announced a change in the tournament format. The next round will include heritage weapons. Each fighter may choose one traditional weapon from their species' military history. This brought excited roars from the alien crowd. Heritage weapons made the fights more spectacular and deadly. Each species had ancient weapons that represented their warrior culture. Cyrix selected a massive war club embedded with sharp crystal spikes. It was as long as Jake was tall and heavy enough to crush stone. The Draconian swung it through the air with ease, creating whooshing sounds that made the crowd cheer. "What will the human choose?" asked voices throughout the arena. "Do they even have traditional weapons?" Jake walked to the human equipment area. Several items were laid out for him to choose from: a rifle, a pistol, a knife, and a few other modern tools. But at the end of the table sat something different not. It was a simple steel sword. No energy fields, no advanced materials, no technological enhancements. Just forged metal with a basic leather grip, exactly like swords that had been made on Earth. For thousands of years, Jake picked up the sword and felt its familiar weight in his hand. He had been training with swords since he was 12 years old. The weapon felt like an extension of his arm. The alien crowd fell silent when they saw his choice. Then the laughter began again, even louder than before. "A metal blade?" roared General Thane from the Draconian section. "Against a crystal war club? Is this another human joke?" "Their species can travel between stars," said his Ephraim voice. "But their warrior carries a primitive sword? I don't understand." "The human has lost his mind," clicked a Corithan. "That tiny blade will shatter against Cyrix's club on the first hit." Even in the human section, there were worried looks. Ambassador Kane leaned over to Dr. Chun. "Are you sure about this? That club could break the sword in half." Dr. Chun looked uncertain. "Jake knows what he's doing," she said, but her voice lacked confidence. The betting odds shifted dramatically against Jake. What had been 10-1 became 100-1. Most aliens couldn't believe the human was serious about fighting a massive war. Club with a simple metal sword. Jake tested the sword's balance and flexibility. The blade was perfectly crafted, with a slight curve that would make it ideal for both cutting and thrusting attacks. The crossguard would protect his hands, and the pommel was weighted to give the weapon proper balance. What the aliens didn't understand was that they were looking at the result of thousands of years of human weapons development. Swords had been perfected through countless battles, refined by master smiths, and tested by warriors who had to stake their lives on their quality. "Fighters, take your positions," announced the referee. Jake walked into the arena circle, sword held loosely in his right hand. Cyrix was already waiting, his massive club resting on his shoulder. Up close, the Draconian was even more intimidating. His yellow eyes burned with predatory intelligence, and his forked tongue flicked out to taste the air. "Little human," Cyrix hissed, his voice like grinding stone. "I will crush you quickly, and eat your sword as dessert." The alien crowd laughed at this threat. Many were already looking forward to seeing the human's primitive weapon destroyed. "Begin!" called the referee. Cyrix immediately charged forward, swinging his massive club in an overhead strike that would have flattened a small building. The crystal spikes gleamed as the weapon whistled through the air toward Jake's head, but the sword was there to meet it. The impact should have shattered the steel blade into 1,000 pieces. Instead, something impossible happened. Jake's sword deflected the massive club, turning its devastating force aside at precisely the right angle. The club slammed into the arena floor next to Jake, sending up sparks and chunks of metal. Cyrix stared in shock. His war club had never been turned aside by anything, especially not by such a small weapon. "How?" gasped a voice from the crystal section. "The physics don't work. That little blade shouldn't have been able to stop such force." Dr. Chun was now standing in the human section, excitement clear on her face. "It's not about stopping the force," she explained to the others. "It's about redirecting it. The sword didn't try to absorb the impact. It guided it away." Jake had used one of the most basic principles of sword fighting. Deflection, rather. Then blocking. By meeting the club at exactly the right angle, he had turned Cyrix's overwhelming strength against itself. The Draconian pulled his club free from the floor and attacked again, this time with a sideways swing that should have been impossible to avoid. Jake's response was a fluid motion that seemed to defy gravity. His sword moved in a perfect arc, once again redirecting the club's force while simultaneously positioning him for a counterattack. The steel blade flicked out like a striking snake, finding a gap in Cyrix's natural armor at the wrist. It was a small cut, barely deep enough to draw blood, but it sent a clear message. The human could have struck deeper if he had chosen to. Cyrix roared in pain and surprise. No opponent had ever wounded him with such a light touch. The cut was precise, targeting nerves that weakened his grip on the war club. "Impossible," breathed High Commander Veltar. "That sword technique, how many generations did it take to develop such skill?" Ambassador Kane found himself answering. "Humans have been refining sword combat for over 3,000 years. Every technique has been tested in real warfare against real opponents." The fight continued, but it was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Cyrix's massive strength and deadly club met Jake's precise technique and perfect timing. Every swing of the war club was turned aside. Every attack was countered with a precise strike that found gaps in the Draconian's armor. Jake wasn't trying to overpower his opponent. He was using the sword to control distance, timing, and positioning. When Cyrix swung high, the sword was there to guide the attack away. When the Draconian tried to breathe poison gas, Jake was already moving to a position where the wind carried the deadly cloud harmlessly past him. "He's not just fighting the Draconian," observed an Exari scientist. "He's fighting the weapon, the environment, even the air currents. It's like he sees the entire battle as a single system." That was exactly what Jake was doing. Human sword fighting had evolved beyond simple weapon combat. It was a complete system of movement, timing, distance, and psychology that treated every aspect of a fight as interconnected. Cyrix was getting frustrated and tired. His massive strength meant nothing if he couldn't hit his target. His deadly club was useless if every swing was turned aside. For the first time in his life, he was being outfought by a much smaller opponent. The Draconian tried one final desperate attack. He raised his club with both hands and brought it down with all his strength, intending to crush Jake and his sword together. Jake's response was beautiful in its simplicity. He stepped forward instead of back, moving inside the arc of the attack, where the club hadn't yet gained its full momentum. His sword moved in a complex pattern that deflected the club while simultaneously striking 3 different nerve clusters on Cyrex's arms and chest. The Draconian collapsed to his knees, his massive club falling from numbed fingers. He tried to roar, but only a weak hiss came out. The precise strikes had temporarily disabled his motor functions without causing permanent damage. "I yield," Cyrex gasped, looking up at Jake with newfound respect. The arena was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, something unprecedented began to happen. The aquatic Murdi began their species version of applause, a harmonic humming that resonated through the water in their environmental suits. The ethereals shifted their gas formations into patterns that showed respect. Even some of the proud Draconians were nodding in acknowledgement. "Winner, Jake Harrison of Earth," announced the referee Dot as Jake helped Cyrex to his feet. The massive Draconian looked at the simple steel sword with new understanding. "This weapon," Cyrex said slowly, "it is not primitive at all, is it?" Jake smiled and shook his head. "It's the result of thousands of years of human warfare. Every technique, every movement, every principle has been tested in real battle against opponents who are trying to kill the person holding it. And you learn to fight with these from childhood?" "Some of us do," Jake replied. "My species, huh?" The arena was packed beyond capacity for the semi-final match. Word of Jake's victories had spread throughout the entire Galactic Trade Station. Aliens who had never cared about the combat tournament were now crowding into every available seat. Jake's opponent, Zexthara of the Nexara Collective, was unlike any fighter he had faced before. The crystalline being stood 7 feet tall, its body made of what looked like living diamond. Light passed through its transparent form, creating rainbow patterns that shifted with every movement. But the most unsettling thing about Zexthara was its eyes, multifaceted like an insect's, but filled with cold intelligence. The Nexari were known throughout the galaxy for their perfect mathematical minds. They could calculate the trajectory of a thrown stone while it was still in the air, predict the exact outcome of complex battles before they began, and solve problems that would take other species years to understand. "This will be different," Dr. Chun warned Jake during the preparation period. "The Nexari don't fight with instinct or trained patterns. They use pure mathematics to create perfect combat solutions." Jake watched Zexthara's practice session on the arena screens. The crystalline being moved with mechanical precision, its attacks following geometric patterns that looked almost like art. Energy beams shot from its hands at calculated angles, bouncing off reflective surfaces to hit targets from impossible directions. "How do you fight mathematics?" asked Ambassador Kane, worried about what this loss might mean for Earth's reputation. "The same way humans always have," Jake replied calmly. "By doing something unexpected." When heritage weapons were distributed, Zexthara selected something that made the alien crowd gasp with appreciation. It was a weapon called a probability blade, a sword-like device that could calculate all possible attack and defense combinations in real time, then automatically choose the option with the highest chance of success. The weapon hummed with energy as complex equations flowed across its crystalline surface. It wasn't just a sword. It was a computer that could predict and counter any possible move its opponent might make. Jake looked at his own weapon choices and picked up the same simple steel sword he had used before. The contrast was stark, advanced. Alien mathematics versus basic human metal. The betting pools had learned to be cautious about Jake, but the odds were still heavily against him. How could primitive techniques defeat a weapon that could predict the future? "Fighters, take your positions," announced the referee. Zexthara moved to the center of the arena with mathematical precision. Every step was calculated for optimal positioning. Its probability blade was already analyzing Jake's stance, movement patterns, and weapon reach. "Human warrior," Zexthara said in a voice like wind chimes. "My weapon has calculated 847,392 possible combat scenarios for this match. In 847,391 of them, you lose within the first 90 seconds. I suggest you surrender now to avoid unnecessary injury." Jake smiled and raised his sword to a ready position. "What about the one scenario where I win?" "An error in my calculations," Zexthara replied. "It will be corrected during combat." The signal sounded, and the match began. Zexthara's first attack was perfection itself. The probability blade moved in a complex pattern that took into account Jake's speed, reach, reflexes, and every possible defensive option. The crystalline being struck at the exact moment when Jake would be most vulnerable, using the precise angle that would be impossible to block or dodge. But Jake did something that wasn't in any of Zexthara's calculations. Instead of trying to block or dodge, he did nothing at all. He simply stood still and let the probability blade pass inches from his face. The arena gasped. The attack had been mathematically perfect, guaranteed to hit its target. But it had missed. Because Jake had moved in a way that made no logical sense, he had stopped moving entirely. Zexthara's multifaceted eyes flickered with confusion. Its weapon began recalculating, trying to understand what had gone wrong. "Interesting," the crystalline being said. "You chose the option with the lowest probability of success, yet it worked." Recalculating. Jake attacked while Zexthara was processing this information. But his attack was equally confusing to the mathematical mind. Instead of using the most efficient striking technique, he chose a slower, more complex movement that should have been easy to counter. The probability. Blade moved to block the attack, but Jake's sword wasn't where the calculations said it should be. It was following a path that made no mathematical sense, yet somehow worked perfectly. "Your fighting style defies logical analysis," Zexthara said, its voice showing the first hint of frustration. "These techniques should not be effective." "That's the point," Jake replied, pressing his attack. "Human martial arts aren't based on mathematics. They're based on psychology, adaptation, and creativity." What Zexthara couldn't understand was that Jake was fighting like a human instead of like a computer. Human combat techniques had been developed through thousands of years of fighting other humans, opponents who were equally intelligent and equally capable of learning and adapting. This had created fighting styles that deliberately included seemingly illogical elements. Feints that looked like real attacks, attacks that looked like feints, movements that wasted energy but confused opponents, and techniques that worked precisely because they shouldn't work. Jake demonstrated this by suddenly switching fighting styles in the middle of combat. He went from European sword techniques to Japanese forms, then to techniques borrowed from staff fighting and knife combat. Each change forced Zexthara's weapon to recalculate everything from scratch. "Impossible," the crystalline being said, its movements becoming less precise as its weapon struggled to keep up with the constant changes. "You are using 17 different combat systems simultaneously. No single warrior should be able to master so many techniques." "Humans don't master one technique," Jake explained, deflecting another perfect attack with an imperfect defense that somehow worked. "We learn from everyone. We adapt, we improvise, we steal good ideas from wherever. We find them." This was the key difference between human and alien combat philosophy. Each alien species had perfected their own fighting style over millions of years, creating techniques that were mathematically superior and perfectly suited to their physiology and psychology. But humans had never had that luxury. Earth was a world where survival meant being able to fight anyone and anything. Humans had learned to be generalists instead of specialists, adapting techniques from every possible source and combining them in new ways. The turning point came when Jake did something that shattered all of Zextharos' calculations. He deliberately made a mistake. He overextended his attack, leaving himself completely open to a counterstrike. According to every mathematical model, this should have been the end of the fight. But when Zextharos' probability blade moved to take advantage of the opening, Jake was ready. His mistake had been made, designed to trick the mathematical mind into making a predictable response. Jake's real attack came from an impossible angle, using the momentum from his fake mistake to power a strike that no calculation could have predicted because it violated the basic principles of efficient combat. The steel sword found the one spot on Zextharos' crystalline body where the light-refracting properties created a weak point. It was a flaw so small that only someone fighting by instinct, rather than calculation, could have found it. Zextharos' form flickered and cracked. The probability blade fell from nerveless fingers that could no longer maintain their grip. "I yield," the crystalline being said, its voice filled with wonder. "Your combat system. It should not work, yet it is devastatingly effective. How is this possible?" Jake lowered his sword. "Because humans don't fight to be perfect. We fight to win. And sometimes winning means doing something that doesn't make sense to anyone else." The arena erupted in sound. This time it wasn't laughter or surprise, but genuine awe and respect. Jake had defeated 3 of the galaxy's greatest warrior traditions, using nothing but a simple sword and human adaptability dot. As he walked off the arena floor, the alien spectators rose from their seats. It was a gesture of respect that had never been given to a human before. In the VIP section, every ambassador and military leader was deep in conversation. The implications of what they had witnessed were staggering. If one human could do this, what could human armies accomplish? "General Thane," said a draconian aide, "what are your recommendations regarding future military cooperation with Earth?" The massive reptilian general watched Jake disappear into the preparation area. "Recommend that we make very sure the humans remain our allies," he said quietly, "because I never want to face an army of warriors who fight like that." Ambassador Kane was already fielding communications from a dozen different species, all wanting to discuss new treaties, trade agreements, and military partnerships with Earth. The combat tournament had accomplished more for human diplomacy than years of negotiations could have achieved. Dr. Chun was frantically updating her notes. "This changes everything," she told Lisa. "They're not just respecting us now. They're recognizing us as a major power." Jake sat in the preparation area, carefully cleaning his sword one more time. The simple steel blade had accomplished something that all of humanity's technology and diplomatic efforts had failed to achieve.